Do you remember Sullivan?
Yeah, he was a nut. He was a nut.
What finally happened to him?
Probably put him in a stockade someplace.
You said he was ready for Section 8.
Yeah.
Were you worried if there was supposed to be total silence? Hello, that he would, good night. Okay, take care. Was you worried if there was supposed to be total silence because Germans were nearby? He'd be mouthing off. He'd be very loud.
Who?
Sullivan.
Yeah, he gets drunk and gets loud.
Wow. I did not want him screaming in the middle of the night, giving away our position to the Germans and jeopardizing the rest of the squad. I decided to put him with Grayton, and I would also monitor their tour from 4 to 600 hours. Huber was summoned to the CP for some reason, and I'd fill in for him until he returned. Lester was already in the bunker when I got there. The night was cold and a full moon out. I had brought my blanket along with me in an attempt to try to ward off the cold. I greeted Lester and settled behind the gun. The first checking to see if it was freeze and not frozen. Checked to see if the machine was free and not frozen. I tried to get Lester to relax a little by telling him that this was a quiet area for the time being. He talked a little in low tones, always keeping an ear cocked for any strange noises. He was from Indiana, away from Evansville, and this is his first time away from home. I smiled and said, "Welcome to the club. Most of the division is in the same situation." He did not have a steady girlfriend, but knew several. I smiled at him. He worked at a defense plant, graduating from high school, and it was long before Uncle Sam got a hold of him. He seemed like a nice person, someone you could trust your life to. I huddled in my blanket and my thought of utter futility and uselessness of the entire charade. The absurdity of its outpost in this freezing weather was meaningless and complete nonsense. We were too far up north to be included in a German offensive, and I expected we'd be moving up shortly as soon as the higher echelon got their act together. Hubert returned in a little while, and I left the bunker and returned to the larger one to get some sleep. I thought of Lieutenant Mancuso sleeping in his warm, comfy at the chateau back in town, and how some got deals while the rest of us struggled along day by day. Granted, we did not see the big picture, but there was no justification or reason to expose the troops in such a manner by incompetent, unskilled leaders. The morning we got the word we're moving up, we attached to the 17th Airborne Corps and heading south.
Wow.
Everyone was apprehensive, electrified with fear and excitement, especially the men who had been thrust into the midst of this conflict and thought they had no business of being here. As we bounced around in trucks, Grayton became noticeably disturbed and bewildered. I thought of Varilla and tried talking to him to reassure him that he would be all right, but soon I realized that he was too far gone. His two companions, Coach and Filler, were not much better. I wondered what I was going to do with them when we got on the line. In the distance, we could hear a rumble of 105s and 155s.
What are those? 105s and 155s?
Well,
What's a 105 and 155?
105 is 105 millimeters, and 155 is probably twice as big.
Oh.
As they left their howitzers, seeking out the enemy. At times it sounded like heavy thunder or lightning, which could be traumatic to a newly arrival soldiers, as it subjected to them to all kinds of delusional supervisions. I also hoped he would not be caught in the back of the trucks with incoming stuff, similar to what happened to Wiltz. I also thought of AAA convoy that was splattered with a machine gun fire. Those not killed directly were singled out and shot individually as they laid in a road. There were 6x6s struggling to make the sweep, the steep snow-covered grade on the road. I thought, here is where we get it. The Germans were hiding in the bush and snow beside the road. When the trucks came into sight, they opened up on them. We passed several spots without incident. I only hoped we would arrive at our destination and get out of these trucks. Suddenly the trucks came to a screeching halt and everyone climbed out, looking around to see where we were. The first platoon was hurriedly assembled and the airborne sergeant motioned for us to follow. We soon reached a clearing after walking for several minutes, spotted posts and our equipment. We were able to get our crew weapon and as much ammo we would carry. Another paratrooper came up to us, smiled and told us to follow him. We were led to a small knoll just behind a crossroad. Dig the gun in and make some holes for yourself, the sergeant stated matter-of-factly. There was a defensive position to repulse the enemy from acquiring the crossroads. He also stated there was another gun emplacement about 200 yards of our right flank. As yes, there was nothing protecting our left flank. There were German patrols in the area all day, some in considerable strength. As long as there was no tanks accompanying them, we were to stand fast and hold. We also suggested we cover our holes with logs and earth to avoid getting hit by the 3 bursts from the mortar and artillery fire.
Where were you located there, John? Where were you located there, John? Hey, John?
We quickly got to the task and in short order had a gun emplacement, completely and roofed with logs. The squad was working on foxholes and had almost had completed them. We started to receive some mortar fire from the south. I jumped into the emplacement with our gun crew and told them to get ready to fire. We had 6 full boxes of ammo in the hole with us, and I told Lape to keep track of the ammo so as we're not to run out. He nodded and looked about for the moment to our immediate front and spotted several white figures in 2s and 3s creeping up cautiously towards us. Behind them was perhaps a dozen or so fanning out to our unprotected area left flank. I motioned to Lape to commence firing, and I could hear the gun to our right open up at the same time. The Germans got caught in a crossfire, and as they hit the ground seeking protection from our fire, they began firing Schmoser's MP-40 burp guns. Behind them were the Nuba-Werfers, and mortars began firing on our positions. I could hear the shrapnel from the 3 bursts hitting the timbers overhead. There was a thin screen of infantry in a circle around our guns. I imagine they were keeping their heads down. The mortar fire increased in intensity, which meant only one thing, tanks. We kept firing, and I could see the white-clad figures falling the snow, covering it in bright red. Others would scramble for our cover in these ditches on each side of the road. I hoped our infantry would pick them off. We had used several boxes of ammo, and I motioned to Lape to see if he'd get an ammo bearer in a hole nearest to us to toss us several boxes. He was unsuccessful in getting a response, probably because they did not want to stick their heads out of the holes. I told him to keep firing and that I would try to get some movement from them. Crawling out of the bunker, I crept towards the first foxhole. As I reached it, a barrage of mortar shells went off. I dived headfirst into the foxhole, striking the ammo bearer. Luckily, it was Lester, rather than Sullivan, or one of the rear echelon persons. I explained to him that we're running out of short of ammo and needed 6 boxes. I threw the boxes as far as I could towards the gun emplacement, and when the mortars let up, crawled out of the hole, reached the boxes, and tossed them near the gun. Lape was firing too rapidly. When I reached the gun, I dropped them down in the bunker and followed in after them. Jen?
Hi, Claire.
Hi, Claire. Hi, Claire.
Hi, Claire.
Hi, Claire.
Why,
Hi, Claire. I got a seat reserved for you, Claire.
Come on over here, Claire.
I got a seat reserved for you, Claire.
You can go around that way. Sit over here. Hey, John.
Claire's saying hi.
John?
Claire's saying hi.
I think he is asleep.
Claire's saying hello.
Claire's saying hi, John. Claire's saying hi.
Oh, she's back again,
She
huh?
snuck up on you.
Now you put me to
I didn't
sleep.
have to sneak.
Huh?
You were sound asleep.
Yeah. I looked at him fall out of the chair.
Sorry to interrupt your sleep.
He said my book put him to sleep. My reading put him to sleep.
Yeah. Lullaby.
How are you doing today, Claire?
Fine,
You're looking good.
thank you.
You're looking good.
Nothing new or different.
Okay. Want me to keep reading? Keep reading?
You have
Okay.
to do your
Hope
thing.
I don't put you to sleep like I put together John to sleep.
I just came to say hello. I'll leave in a couple
I understand. I peered to the front, but could not see any movement. I turned towards Lester, half out of the hole, and motioned to him to have the person behind me toss the ammo to his hole. He understood, and during the lull in the mortar firing, got another load of ammo once again, and the mortars open up, and the white figures proceeding. So, they're in Germany, and there's not many Americans, and Americans are in foxholes, but they see the Germans all around them, everywhere, everywhere. They're wearing white, so you can't see them in the snow, and they're shooting off all their ammunition as quickly as possible, so they're running out. So they had to go find an ammo barrel to hopefully not get shot to get the ammo to bring it back to the foxhole. So that's where we're at right now. They're all over the place, the Germans. They're everywhere. He understood, and during the lull of mortar firing, we got another load of ammo into the hole. Firing at them, I could see several go down, screaming in pain, but they still kept coming. The gun on the right was firing more rapidly, and I only hoped they would not run out of ammo. I motioned to Lester to watch his left flank and keep the rest of the squad looking in that direction. He nodded, and I knew that he was understood me. There were sounds of larger shells going ahead. It was outgoing. A 105 battery had opened up to our rear, and I could make out the bodies of the dead Germans strewn in the front of our position. They had breached our initial perimeter. The screen of riflemen were now entering our second perimeter, our gun emplacement. Large gaps have developed between our units. As the enemy kept pouring in, a platoon of 81 millimeter mortars from our company was quickly put into place behind and lending support and fire. The AA unit was brought up and dug in around us. A quads 50s blazing away, onrushing German infantry men who were firing machine guns, burp guns and rifles, and machine pistols. All we needed was a platoon of Tiger tanks spitting out the deadly 88s. As 57 millimeter and 75 millimeter assault platoons were put on the line, they began firing point blank at the German infantry. What's a 57 millimeter?
Huh?
What's a 57 millimeter?
57?
Yeah.
What, howitzer?
And what's a 75 millimeter?
Bigger.
Bigger. So your guys came up with the larger weapons,
Yeah.
and they're helping you out. They began firing point blank at the German infantry. Lucky, some of these units covering our left flank and our 81s were peppering the same area. I motioned the LAPE to fire 5 short bursts to conserve our critical supply of ammo. The Nebel warfare shelling increased in intensity, and I wondered how our people were making out in the uncovered foxhole. The Germans were firing by the clock, with the artillery dropping 20 to 30 rounds every 5 minutes. I felt sorry for the new replacements to have gone through this ordeal the first day on the line. If they were lucky enough to live through it, I thought of the 2 original ammo bearers, and I wondered if they were making it through all this in their uncovered slit trenches. There was a pit full of profusion of dead and wounded scattered to our immediate front, some of ours but mostly German infantry. Their scream and terror and moans of pain were deafening, and I could imagine how this was affecting the new men, wherever they may be. The sound of German barrage must be terrifying to all of us. Our 105s were still landing directly on top of the advancing troops, and I could hear the blood-curdling screams of pain as their flesh was literally torn from their bodies by shrapnel ripping into them. I spotted several trying to escape the bombardment, and I quickly motioned the LAPE to fire at them, cutting them down before they could make the ditches on each side. I brought down several with my M1, trying to keep them from entering the ditches and eventually coming up behind us. Suddenly it was quiet and there was no more movement out front. The paratrooper major came out from nowhere, walked about to our front, and returned to our bunker. "You guys did good. The Germans have hightailed it for now. Take a break," he smiled and walked away. Lester came up and said, "We've got some casualties." I walked back with him to one of the holes. It was the hole Crichton had occupied. It was twice the size he had really dug out. He had received a direct mortar hit, and confined space had just concentrated the force to the blast. Blood and parts of his limbs were spattered all about the inside and outside of the hole. There was not enough left in Grayton to make a positive identification. I could not see or even find his dog tags. Lester brought them to me to another hole. It was fuller. Somewhere he had taken several rounds from a burp gun, and half of his face was gone. He must have been peering out of a foxhole when they caught him unexpectedly by a German soldier. I took one of his dog tags and put it in my field jacket, and was visibly shaken by what I saw. I did not know either of these men, but I felt directly responsible for their tragic death. I should have paid more attention to their welfare than I did, and less the killing of Germans. Okay, we'll see you later now.
Take
See you
care.
later,
Take care
Claire.
of yourself, Claire.
See you later, Claire.
Bye, Claire.
Bye, Claire.
You're funny, Claire. Bye. Bye, Claire.
She's funny.
Yeah. I was shocked by the dismay finding them in such a condition. They were innocent victims of a ruthless and merciless war that was thrust upon them without their knowledge at all. Sullivan and the rest of the squad were okay and returned to the gun to prepare a counter a German attack, which would eventually occur. Soon it would be dark and didn't know what to expect. We stocked the emplacement with as many boxes of ammo as we could, leaving room for a gun crew. Lester and Koch retrieved more ammo from the trailer in the rear.
You see an ammo box Grandma had?
It said, we stocked the emplacement with as many boxes of ammo as we could. Lester and Koch retrieved more ammo from the trailer in the rear and brought up some K rations and a fresh supply of water. They told us that Post had survived the bombardment and he was holed up in one of the cellars in town, a short distance from the rear area. We then settled down for a long night ahead of us. The platoon engineers from a paratroop company were busy laying out mines on the road and the side of the banks in the front. They cautioned us not to wander around too much, as they also laid some anti-personnel mines. Bouncing Betsy's. Before they left, they gave us a box of flares and flare pistols, which would indicate to me they were in for another busy night. How often did you use a flare gun?
John, how often did you use a flare?
How often did you use a flare gun?
How often?
Did you use a flare gun?
Well, you use it as self-defense too. If you didn't have a weapon, you just shoot the guy with the flare gun.
Did you have to use a flare gun as a weapon?
Yeah.
How long would a flare gun in the sky light up the area for?
What?
If you shot it up in the sky, how long did it light up the area for?
About 2 minutes.
And they were able to see the enemy pretty clear with the flare
Yeah, it
gun.
was pretty clear, yeah.
So that was a good tool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, John, somebody's asking from France. He has a property. He has a house in Harvard.
Haverford West.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's asking you, thank you for your email. Is there any clues to Jean's identity? Did she work? Does John know what her work was and what age she would have been around 1944?
Now, who is he talking about?
He's asking about Jean. Do you
A
remember?
resident of Haverford West
Yeah.
is asking you, he's trying to help locate her for you.
Yeah, she was on the other side of the territory.
Yeah.
I don't
But
know.
Didn't she work, wasn't her dad the mayor or something?
A little town in England, yeah.
How old was Jean at the time?
Huh?
How old?
26, 24, 25.
So she was much older than you?
She was about 5 years older.
She was
than you.
older than you?
Yeah.
Okay, so there you go, there's your answer.
Okay. Oh, and do you remember what street they lived on?
Do you remember what street they lived on?
Do you remember what
In
street the
Haverford
Youngs?
In
West.
England?
Yeah,
Haverford West?
Yeah,
Yeah.
in Wales.
East Essex Bold or some stupid thing.
East Essex?
East Essex. Essex.
E-S-S-E-X?
E-S-S-E-X.
East Essex.
Okay, that's good enough. Send it to
Okay.
him.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna find her for you. We're gonna find her for you.
Yeah, but she was older too. She's probably long gone.
I checked the rest of the squad and helped them pile more logs on sod on top of their holes. I told them to stay alert and not to sleep, and their buddy in the next hole was up. Lape was assistant gunner. Amberbarrow would alternate on the gun, sleeping in spurts, with one ear always cocked for the strange noises. The one thing that really bothered me was that he did not have any communications. We did not have any communications with the CP. No one bothered to string a telephone line out to our gun, and I felt that we were out here all alone. It had grown dark and started to snow again. Our rear units had retrieved most of the dead, and the wounded were evacuated to the rear. The German dead were still lying where they had fallen, their bodies almost bloated and ashen in color. The wounded would be taken as prisoners of war and evacuated under guard to our rear. I had changed my socks, but constant confinement in cramped quarters was cutting my circulation down. I was concerned about frostbite in my legs and feet. If we could only get someone somewhere warm, I knew that I'd feel we were in a defensive position. Else on the line thought the same way. I realized we were in a defensive position, but little respite from the cold and the confinement would help immensely. I guess Coors wanted a firm line of defense. We were just that, with no amount of wishing was going on to change it for us.
Huh. This is an old article that he just sent to us, too. Pembrokeshire and World War II, the role West Wales played in the world's greatest
Yeah.
conflict. They have pictures right here, John.
These are landing stations on VE date that they were coming in to go into Europe.
Okay,
That's all the equipment coming in.
yeah. Is that,
That's Lahar
yeah.
port.
Yeah, that was a while ago. Well, they're running articles on it now. It's kind of interesting. Destroyed oil tanks at Lanreath. Those are advertisements. Let's see what this one is. Operation Jansen. Troops preparing on Tenby Beach. Isn't that interesting?
What is it?
Jansen was part of the extensive preparation and planning for Overlord. It took place in...
That was the nation of France. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, they're sending us these articles so you can read them.
Oh,
What
yeah.
I'll do is I'll print them out so you can look at them.
Yeah.
Okay?
Good idea. Okay. We had eaten another K-ration and washed it down with a mouthful of water from our canteens. Lape was getting jittery, and I tried talking to him to see if I could calm him down. After a while, I realized he was scared, and no amount of talking would rid him of the fear. I was scared too, but the responsibility of 12 men's welfare put a different perspective on it. I was more concerned that we were a squad so thinly and had no way of communicating our plight if we could happen to get in trouble. I looked back at the rest of the squad, and I was thankful for the 2 ammo bearers. Plus Lester and Huber, they would not let me down if they could help it. And I was grateful for that. Suddenly there was a puff of mortars coming in, and we ducked into the bunkers, just barely looking out to see if there were any infantry closing in on us. The mortars were landing all around us. I motioned to Lape to get on the gun and open fire when he saw something. There was no movement out there, but the mortar fire increased intensity, and they were joined by distinct sounds of 88s, which meant only one thing: tanks. The 88s always came before the tanks?
What?
The 88s always came before the tanks? The 88s. 88s always came before the tanks?
All is what?
Did the 88s always come before the tanks came?
Stop.
88 millimeters. 88.
Mars.
Yeah, did the 88 weapons, 88s, always come before the tanks? What came before the tanks? When the German tanks were coming, what was first?
Well, they had the arbor. They had the stupid. Well, they had equipment lined up for them too.
I listened intently. Sure enough, there were tanks approaching our position. I fired a flare and it gently arced 200 yards to the front. It then burst into intense light, and there it was, Mark IV lumbering slowly up the road. I grasped Lape's shoulder, signaling him not to fire to give away our position. There would be infantry behind the tanks, waiting to reach our position, and then hammer us with grenades and rifle fire.